punchy grooves of Millennial Frog's latest album, Poverty of Content, available now on every podcast service and every music service that exists.
The controversial Millennial Frog.
The one and only, the true musical messiah, the bringer of hate and discontent, Millennial Frog.
The public enemy number one to the six-letter named distributor.
Yeah, true. Which, if you want to hear who that distributor is, you can find out on the latest episode of All Gas, No Trash, the Game Rage Music Podcast. And if you like other podcasts or other topics, such as anime, you can listen to the Anime Syndicate, the Buttfuck Nowhere Show, Central Intelligence Podcast, Game Rage Movies and TV. We have Game Rage Wrestling, Panel to Panel, as well as Team Killing Glitch Tards. You can also listen to Without Censor, which is the Game Rage interview podcast. And we have some excellent interviews on there. And like I said, you can go check out Millennial Frog's new album. But he was so gracious enough to not just give us one, but he not just gave us two, but he gave us 3 album drops this week. Poverty of Content, The Gentleman Known as Millennial Frog, and 30-Second Master.
Very much like LeBron when he arrived in Miami with the big three, Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. We're not going to win 1 championship. We're not going to win 2 championships. Not going to win 3. I mean, by the end of the year, who the hell knows how many albums Millennial Frog will have? It could be set. We could be matching Michael Jordan numbers in terms of championships to albums.
Oh, absolutely.
6 albums by the end of the year, if not more.
I mean, he's already made 4 and we're not even halfway through. And in the last 6 months alone, he's put out 6 albums. So,
shit. So you're already at Michael Jordan numbers. Now we're shooting for Bill Russell. I think he has 11 championships. So we could get 11 albums by the end of
the year. You know what? I think that's an excellent. We need 12 because we need to beat him.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. We will have the most championships in history for Millennial Frog. But anyways, if you like those things, you can go to GameRageMagazine.com. You'll find everything there. Follow us on social media at Game Rage Magazine on Instagram and TikTok, and at Game Rage Mag on Twitter. If you want to follow Adam to hear cool stuff about worldwide music escapades and musical musings that are unbeknownst to the mainstream media,
but known to us, if you know that reference, then shoot a comment on Game Rage Magazine. Maybe we'll give you a prize.
Yeah. Shoot us a comment, and if you get it right, what that's from or what that reference is referencing, then yeah, we'll give you something. I don't know what, but we'll give you something. You'll get something cool out of it. This is no party preference, so I don't know. We got to do something maybe political themed, or you know what? Hey, we'll send you a guillotine because you know what? We'll send you
a cigar, a
cigar cutter, guillotine cigar cutter, yeah. Or it'll be, you know what? We'll do I'll send them the political. I'll print them out the political flyer that we made for Ultra Guillotine, who is the Game Rage candidate for president, or candidate for the entire government basically at this point. Ultra Guillotine 2024. No corruption, no lies, no mercy. So anyways, you can put all that shit there. You can go hear our other stuff. So as I said, this is no party preference.
What was the slogan for the Ultra Guillotine? Heads rolling since...
Oh yeah, making heads roll since 1792. So yeah, top keck indeed. I actually got some interesting play on Twitter with that.
Oh, you did?
I was fucking around. I posted on all our stuff, and then because now it's obviously presidential season. So, well, by the way, I'm Josh. He's Adam.
Yes. Hello.
And since it's presidential season,
howdy.
You know, I forgot to introduce us in the last part. Oh well, people know who the fuck we are at this point, I guess. Oh well, if they don't, who cares? But yeah, people have been really getting about their, they've been getting into their demagoguery with their candidate and fucking spouting all this shit. And everyone that says something negative about Trump or says something negative about Biden, I will reply to their post and pop it in there with that. And I'll say, interestingly enough, that's why we're voting for Ultra Guillotine 2024. And then I just say, and then I put the tagline, it ain't no party, like a guillotine party or whatever. And yeah, it's been getting some pretty funny responses and play.
Nobody knows the edge like the Ultra Guillotine.
Yeah, exactly. Pushing the edge since fucking whatever. Yeah, that's
1792.
Yeah.
Okay, just looking at this board, I'm just gonna take a quick second to jerk us off to wash our own balls for.
Oh yeah, let's do it. Let's wash our balls.
Yeah, the fact that we're doing what is it 14 podcasts or shit?
Is that the number? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then 13 for this one.
Plus
and then 14 is a slice. So yeah, it's 14 podcasts. Jesus Christ.
Dude, I'm gonna be honest, man. I really can't imagine. I can't even think of anybody that's doing 14 podcasts.
Neither can I. I can't think of anybody who's doing. Look at the like in last month. Okay, we made 23 total episodes last month. I can't think of anybody who's doing with their singular podcast 23 episodes a month. Yeah. So just like Millennial Frog putting in the work, we too are also putting in the work.
Yeah. I only bring that up just because of the fact that there's really nobody else like us doing the work and doing that across 14 different podcasts. So a little bit of ball washing on our own end, but fuck it. This is our podcast. We can do whatever the fuck we want.
Yeah, we do whatever the hell we want.
All right, so now we're at no party preference. So let's
so the Game Rage, controversy and politics podcast, basically, I guess, right, is kind of what this is turning into.
Okay.
Which is fine by me because I enjoy it. So today's episode is brought to you by Evolution is a Mystery, full of change that no one sees.
Please don't come after us, WWE. We love you very much. And if you want to hook us up on the Game Rage Wrestling podcast and you would love to have us at WrestleMania 41, you could do so.
Absolutely.
Reach out to us at, what is it? Josh
at GameRageMagazine.com. You send us an email.
Yeah, send us an email. Hook us up with some WrestleMania 41 tickets. We're not shy about going to WrestleMania.
Absolutely. And we're also whores, so we'll plug the shit out of that on every podcast we do. All 14 podcasts will be plugging and shilling for WrestleMania 41. But anyways, so today's episode is the evolution of revolution. And we kind of were talking about that a little bit last week with some revolutionary stuff and whatnot, a little bit. But I wanted to do a proper episode because we kind of got into how it's starting to change a little bit. And as much as the revolution, maybe in our current climate, our current society, maybe violent revolution's not fully on the table yet, but you can't argue with its success. Throughout history, there have been multitudes of examples of violent resistance changing the way for something to happen. And don't get me wrong, I'm not advocating for that, I guess. Or maybe I am, I don't know. But I at the very least think that it works. You can't argue with the history of it. Violent revolution against an oppressive or even non-oppressive government is effective. There's times it fails, times it wins, but it's effective nonetheless. And I don't know if it's the softness of what's, society has kind of become over the last maybe, 60-ish years, at least here in America. I don't know if that has tempered people and sort of tamed them into being, instead of being fucking ferocious lions, everybody's like a goddamn house cat now at this point. We're starting to see some violence and some pushback against the establishment in regards to this Palestine and Israel issue, which we talked about a lot of it last episode. We're starting to see some of them fight back, and it's not to the level that it needs to be effective against essentially the forces that are trying to stop them. But maybe this is the genesis of that. And maybe if you couple that with the utilization of social media and this whole block party thing and all that stuff, that could be an effective means to where you don't have to burn down your country to the ground. Because that's the only problem with it. It's the only problem with the violent uprising. Yeah, sometimes it's necessary and needed, but you're burning your shit to the ground. Like, you're burning your house to the ground.
Yeah, I don't know what. I guess the way I would phrase it is, what other way could you make your government understand without a little physical disobedience? Because even peaceful protest or pacifism is kind of questionable to begin with, right? To think you can protest here. This is your lot. This is your space to protest, but don't do it anywhere else. And don't do it at these times. Don't do it here in this public school, even though it is a public space or whatever. I think the only way you effectively make people understand what your cause is about is sometimes you gotta fucking raise a little bit of hell. Like, it doesn't have to be excessive, but you get your point across. And not that I'm advocating for burning flags, but fuck, man, you know what gets under people's, especially U.S. citizens that live here, nothing gets the attention more of somebody burning the American flag. And like I said, I'm not advocating for that activity, but if you want to get somebody's attention, you fucking do that.
Yeah. I mean, that is, I don't know why it's really, I feel like it's almost exclusively to America, because I feel like most other countries don't give a shit if you burn their flag. And it's probably because they have revolutions every other fucking week, almost, most other countries. So burning their flag is like, it's kind of that's a thing. That's like, oh, we just do this. When we're pissed off at the government, we just light the flag on fire. And then everybody goes, yeah, fuck these guys. And that's it, right? Whenever someone does it here, oh man, it is the ultimate disrespect you can do to essentially America is to burn our flag. And I don't really know why that is. I feel like that's the patriotism that people have been developed over the years, right? With being so pro-American. Now that's all starting to change, I feel like. People are starting to get on the bandwagon of not necessarily saying, hey, we got some problems, man. Like, we're fucking up. We're doing some shit all around, and maybe we need to just kind of back off a little bit. But one of the things that I wanted to get into, it's funny, we talking about revolution and whatnot. Back when our country, America, was founded, right? We were founded out of a revolution against the British monarchy. And essentially, I mean, there were many reasons for this revolution to happen, but if you parse it down and you put it down to a basic level, it was essentially because they raised the tax of, I believe it was like 2% on tea. That was essentially the reason why we literally started a war and rebelled against the monarch, the King of England, and said, you can't fucking charge me that 2% for tea. And I think that logic was sound, right? It's like, fuck you. You don't get to pay. You don't get to just charge me more money for no reason. I'm way over here. Fuck off. You don't get to tell me. And then, as a matter of fact, while we're thinking about it, you don't get to tell me what to do from over there. I'll make my own decisions. I'll make my own country with blackjack and hookers, you know? And that we did. We did that. And it's also funny how essentially in the immediate aftermath of the American Revolution, we also had mini little revolutions going against the new government of America.
Yes.
And one of those, I believe it was Shays Rebellion.
Shays Rebellion, yeah.
That was actually, I believe, the last time that a sitting president actually took the role of quote unquote commander-in-chief into battle and went, like George Washington went and fucking was like, hey, I'm commander-in-chief, bitch.
So not just a figurative title, but somebody that was actively
leading the war, going to battle, went to the battle, brought the guys there, and was leading them to go fight this battle. And I mean, Shays Rebellion was essentially over the excessive taxation by the newly formed United States government on its citizens. And they brought up some great points. Hey guys, we just fought this war against the British because we were getting taxed too much. Now we're getting taxed even more. What the fuck, man? And that's kind of like what I was talking about in the last episode about people doing revolutions, but then like not really knowing what to do afterwards and being like, okay, cool. We're free, but fuck, now we got to run a country. How the fuck does this work? And yeah, that's a growing pain of learning how to do this shit. And it sucks because that is very hypocritical to rebel over taxes and then oppressively tax your own citizens to help pay for the revolution that, you just went through essentially. And it gets me into kind of today, right? Our modern time. And I'm going to talk specifically here about us in California. And one of the new things that, like, I can't believe people aren't rioting in the streets because of this. Like, people will riot over fucking Palestine and Israel. People will riot over a multitude of different subjects. Now, whether you agree with them or not is irrelevant. The fact that people will riot in the streets for any of these specific causes that kind of almost don't really affect them, but yet they're not rioting in the streets because of these new taxes that are being imposed upon us, which a lot of people don't know about. And one of these taxes is they are increasing, starting July 1st here in California, they're increasing the gasoline tax.
To what?
They're increasing it by 3.89%. And you want to know what their reasoning for that was? To keep up with inflation. The tax man needs to keep up with inflation so he can make sure my wages aren't even keeping up with inflation. How the fuck am I going to afford another 3%? Now, granted, it comes out to only 2 cents a gallon, but here in California, it's already 57 cents a gallon. It's now going to be 59 cents a gallon that we're paying. So that price at the pump, subtract 60 cents from that. That's what the real price of the gas is, here at least, right? And that's not the only thing. The other thing that they're doing is they're creating this pilot program that they're running this year in 2024. And I guess this has been going on since 2017, which I didn't even realize. This thing got very sneakily passed in the California Senate and the California House of Representatives, signed by the old governor. And it was a plan to say, hey, we all said that we can't have any, we need to have new electric vehicles being sold in the state by 2035, right? That's the law now. So by 2035, California will no longer be able to sell new gasoline-powered vehicles, only electric-powered vehicles, right? So they said, hey, wait, well, we realized kind of after we made this a law and we were kind of doing the numbers and the math, and we realized that if people aren't paying as much for the gas tax, then we're not going to be making as much money on said gas tax. So
they're trying to speed up. They're trying to get while the getting's good for the gas.
Well, but this new thing that they're doing is now they've already done a pilot program where they've figured out the method by which it will be calculated, and they've figured that out, and it's going to be essentially called a per mile usage fee.
I have heard of this.
And so what essentially, now I don't know the number because it's a formula, and what's fucked is it's different for every single person. They take the vehicle that you have, the make, year, and model, and they take the EPA estimated mileage per gallon that you're supposed to be getting. Or if you're in an electric vehicle, they'll take the EMPG, which is the electric mile per gallon equivalent. And then they divide that by how many miles you drive, not just per year, on a monthly basis. And they're going to then figure out with some other means, it's still kind of weird what the other factoring thing that they're going to factor in is, but that's where they're going to determine what your monthly mileage fee is going to, what your monthly fee is going to be for your vehicle road use tax. And it's going to apply to not just electric vehicles, but to every vehicle. So if you have a gasoline powered vehicle, not only are you going to be paying all these taxes in gas, but you're going to be paying an additional fee every month to use the roads of the state of California. And one of the things that's the fucking worst part about it is our vehicle registration is supposed to pay for fix the roads and all that shit. And one of the things that I read yesterday and I learned was that 80% of the money that goes to fix our roads only 20% of that goes from the registration we pay. 80% comes from other sources, such as the gasoline tax and, various other taxes that they impose, right? So it's very upsetting to see that now, essentially, if you have a gas-powered vehicle after not even after 2035, this is going to go into effect, I think, in 2027. 2024, this year, they're doing the pilot program to get the reporting and the payment system pilot program. So then by 2027, they can put it into effect. And essentially, you're going to have to report your mileage every month. And they've now turned driving on the road into a subscription service. Because every month you'll have to pay whatever it was based on how much mileage you drove. You'll have to pay the fee. And what's funny is I don't think any roads are going to get fixed out of this. I don't think anything's going to change. It's just to give the state government more money. And additionally, there's another fee that's going to be imposed by the California, I believe it's the Air Resources Board. They are imposing a new it's a 50%, if it's a new 50 cent per gallon. They're not calling it a tax because they called it a tax and everybody got up in arms. So now they're just calling it a fee. It's going to be 50 cents per gallon for every gallon of gasoline you use. And they said that the reason why they're not calling it a tax is because the state government actually never actually takes it. What ends up happening is, I guess through various methods, the state government gives the gasoline companies and the oil companies who manufacture the gasoline for California or whatever, they give them credits and they give them money basically for meeting the goal of the more air friendly and fuel efficient type of gasolines that they make. And so what they do is they give them money. They pay them for this. So now they can't really afford to pay them anymore. So now what they're doing is they're passing that on to the consumer. So we will directly be paying the oil companies an extra 50 cents a gallon so that they can make quote unquote more environmentally friendly fuel. So they're just charging us 50 cents more a gallon and it's government mandated, which in my opinion is a tax. It's not it just doesn't matter if they're getting it or not. They're just getting this money to give to the fucking oil company. And what's fucked is the person who's in charge, the California Air Resources Board is comprised of I think 12 voting members. And one of the head voting members is someone who came from working at an oil company, was a former CEO. And I go on and I look at this thing that's a governing body that makes these decisions. And they have two members of the public that are supposed to be just regular Joe members of the public who are on this board, right? I looked at the two people who they have in these positions. And neither of them are just your average. They both have PhDs. They both have multitudes of experience working in the oil industry. So the system is rigged to make that happen. And like I said, we rebelled over a 2% increase in the tax of a drink. Our own government, at least at the state level, is further taxing us to death. And no one is rioting in the streets because of this.
I'm sure once it goes into effect, it will. I'm sure.
I hope so.
I think a lot of people are going to be upset with, just the cost alone of owning an electric vehicle, let alone like a Tesla. Yeah, it's on the upwards of 5 figures to purchase one, right?
Yeah.
So not everybody has the privilege of it. It is a privilege to own that type of vehicle, an electric vehicle. And I'm sure the goal is to have affordable electric vehicles in the future. And not this isn't me dogging on electric vehicles, but I know the batteries are somewhat problematic, right?
So one of the things that I've heard, right, and I've done some research into this, and I can't remember the exact number, but essentially every time, like when you drive an electric vehicle, when you buy it, right, just from the manufacturing of that electric vehicle, you'd have to drive that car for 100 years to make it carbon neutral, just off of its manufacture. And that's not even including the carbon footprint that's being created to create the electricity to power the vehicle. Because most of our electricity doesn't come from wind or solar. It comes from, coal-powered electric plants or natural gas-powered electrical plants. That's where most of our electricity is generated through. So there are, drawbacks to that. And again, everyone who buys an electric car that says they're buying it because they're trying to help the environment, you're really actually not. That's like a straw man argument. There really is no actual basis behind that being factual. If you want to buy an electric car, just say, yeah, I think it's fucking cool and I want to buy an electric car. You don't got to be an asshole and just, I'm doing it for the environment. Like, because you're not actually doing anything for the environment by that. Because again,
the amount of resources it takes to create it is off-putting the environmental good that it's supposed to do.
Yeah, basically. So we've entered this age of lunacy, at least in California. And one of the interesting things that the governor said, somebody asked him, hey, how do we go from having just a few years ago, we had over $1 billion surplus to now we're in the hundreds of billions of dollars in a deficit for the state budget, right? They said, oh, how did that happen?
Billions or millions?
No, billions. Like,
Okay.
the state was in a multi-billion dollar surplus at some point.
I think it was $7 billion in surplus.
And now we're in the, maybe we're, shit, you know what? I got to look that up because I fucking.
Just so for the sake of accuracy.
Yeah, I need to be accurate. California state.
I think it was several $billion.
Budget deficit.
It wasn't double digits, but I think it was at one point. Was it $7 million?
Oh, yeah, it's 20. Okay, so right now our deficit is $27.6 billion.
Okay, and what was it when it was a surplus?
California.
It was like in 2021, right?
Surplus budget. Yeah, it was in 2021, I think. Yeah, we had $100 billion surplus in 2022.
So now we're $20 billion.
Now we're $27 billion in the hole. We went from having $100 billion extra.
How the fuck did that happen?
To now having $27 billion that we can't pay the state budget. We're $27 billion behind on that. So, and somebody asked him how that happened. And he said, climate change. That was what his answer was. His answer was carbon credits.
A single phrase.
Yeah.
And no follow up, no explanation.
Oh, our governor is very good at being slimy and not letting. So he just went on some rampage about the environment, and then that was like I think the end of the press conference or whatever. But that was the answer we got, and I want to go burn his house down. Like that's what I want to do. That's what Josh wants. He wants to go burn this guy's fucking house to the ground and be like, what do you mean, bitch? You lost $127 billion in the course of 2 years? It just disappeared? Oh, no. I don't think it just disappeared. I'm sure there's plenty of your buddies and plenty of people that benefit you that money went to. Because again, as we've talked about the corruption in government, and this is why I think we're to the point where Block Party 2024 and any sort of non-violent civil disobedience is not going to work. It's not going to work to make the change.
I do want to make a correction.
Yeah.
I do want to make a correction. It's not Block Party. It's Block Out. It's
Block Out. That's right. That's the
just to clarify. Yeah. But Block Party sounds a lot more fun.
It does actually, man. Maybe we should try to get it changed to Block Party 2024.
Hey, maybe we should host a large gathering, a Block Party, and
everybody blocks all the fucking people that are assholes.
No, you dupe a figurehead into coming.
Oh man!
And then you put them on the spot. And do this or Ultra Guillotine.
Ultra Guillotine will be taking your place, good sir.
Good buddy, Ultra Guillotine will make sure that you abide by our new
constitution.
Yeah,
our new rules. Not even the new ones, the current rules that exist. And that's just, and like I said, I know we're gonna be to that point where if we here in America are crawling ever so closer to a divide that we will no longer come back from. It's a divide that will split us so deeply that the only thing to rectify it will be a civil war. And I'm not calling for that because, as I said before, I don't think people know what that really means. I don't think people understand that. All these LARPers and shit out there, oh yeah, I got my fucking food and I got my shotgun and I got my body armor, I'm ready to go. I don't think you understand how truly bleak and miserable it's going to be if a civil war were to happen here in America.
Death.
It's just going to be death and destruction. And the likelihood that you are going to survive is probably very low. I'm of the opinion that we're getting to the point where that's going to become necessary, where people are going to start saying, well, shit, we know this is going to be like this. Fuck, we're going to have to do this. Like, we're going to have to do it. We're going to have to suck it up and just go through this to get the system fixed. And I don't want it to get to that point. But as we see in our current climate, our current lineup of political candidates that we talked about before, I think people have become too deified, I guess. And this is just, people are so ingrained that if their candidate loses, shit's going to go down either way. Like this election, this rematch election is just, it's so divisive. If the Trump people lose, civil war. If the Biden people lose, civil war, right? That's kind of how I feel like they're just going to respond. And you couple that with the fact that we're being taxed to death and we're being essentially priced out of being able to just live. That's the only option left. And in revolutions past, they've all done the same thing. They kill all the people that are at the top, depose everyone, and say, cool, now the revolutionaries are going to become the man. We're going to become the government. And then they generally immediately fuck it up and ruin it for everybody. Because there is that old saying, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? And that it's true. It happens all the time.
Yeah, dude. I mean, Russia's probably the most evident case of that, where the egalitarians, the working class, the common man rise up to the czars, overtake, only to be taken over by a party that is seemingly for the people, the Communist Party. Vladimir Lenin, Stalin, these cats that were supposed to be the figureheads for a working class man, these people fucking end up in gulags. They disappear out of nowhere, get pushed out of windows, get pushed out of the third floor. And that's what ends up happening. I mean, even Africa, dude, warmongering is still going on there. There's multiple parties that are trying to attain the crown or be the governing body for one entire country. I mean, Nigeria is probably the most recent case of that happening. And shit, who the fuck knows how that applies to the US, because it's history seems to rhyme pretty frequently. So I don't know what that spells for us, but it is concerning that when there's a vacuum of power or a void for a governing body, that it's not usually the best person for the job to follow up and create a referendum for the country so that it has a sustainable future. There's like a weird period where things end up being combative, I suppose. So what do you have to add?
Well, and one of the things too about communism and whatever, I mean, like Lenin and Stalin didn't fucking invent communism.
Yeah.
They essentially just really it was called Stalin. It was Stalinism and Leninism. It was their versions of, I guess, communism that really.
It was Karl Marx and Frederick Engels.
Right, yeah. They were the two that actually invented it. And then it became known as Marxism. Like true communism really became known as Marxism because there were so many flavors and variations of communism that what?
No, keep going.
There were so many flavors and variations of it that what is that funny?
Marx, like Marxism, like you be a Mark.
That's pretty
Marxism,
good. Yeah. Hey man, it's Marxism. What if that's like if you're racist against people who are Marx, you're Marxism? Yeah, like you're Marxist.
You're Marxist.
But yeah, like they didn't that form of communism, that initial form, maybe would have probably worked out better if there was no central figurehead or there was no main guy in charge to take over. Because that's what Lenin and Stalin basically did, is they took over and became corrupt. Because they were the sole power in charge. And that's when they said, oh, fuck, man, we got to keep this. Once you get power, you do anything you can to keep it. And here, at least in the US, we're kind of, our leaders are forced to give it up or the president at least is forced to give it up after 8 years. Like you got to hang it up. You can't do it anymore by law. But I don't think that those types of societies have been good examples of what you should do after a revolution, because obviously it just became worse. Honestly, life was probably better under the czars than it was for the than it was under Stalin and Lenin for the people.
Yeah, I mean, because shit, dude, there's photos of people waiting in bread lines for when there was a communist rule.
Yeah.
And it was almost, I mean, I think it could be debated about whether these people being in a setting like with the czars or being in a communist setting, which one's better? I don't fucking know. But waiting to find out where your next meal is going to come from, and if you're waiting in a bread line, dude, if you're waiting at the door of the government to give you food, I mean, you can guarantee you're not fucking eating.
Yeah. And why was that in existence? Because when they rebelled, they fucking tore their whole country down. And in order to rout the Soviet czar, or not Soviets, but the czars, they tore that country to the ground. And with it went all of their logistics supply systems for making bread and making. So now everything's got to be rationed until we figure out how to get this shit back going again. And that's the problem with it. That's the problem with violent revolution. And honestly, that's kind of what the people in charge generally count on is, well, hopefully these assholes are just too lazy. Hopefully they realize that this is going to be bad times, and it's better to just live under this rule than it is to rebel against us, because afterwards, who knows where your next meal is going to come from. At least I can say, well, you can come to the bread line and get bread, eventually. Whereas, fuck, if you take me out, maybe there won't be any bread lines. I gave you that. I gave you the bread lines, motherfucker. At least I gave you that. And it's becoming more clear and more evident that humans just don't know what the fuck we're doing. In general, I feel like that money has ruined society. I don't know if money needs to exist or if it should even exist. Obviously, Bitcoin is something that's been revolutionary in terms of the monetary system, a non-centralized digital currency. Man, that sounds really great. But the barrier to entry is also fucking for the elites only at this point. If you want to be real, if you want to be serious about having some sort of money in the Bitcoin, at least with Bitcoin. Digital currency, sure, there's plenty that you could get into right now if you're poor. But they're also worth nothing and potentially could end up being worth nothing. You could even lose money. So I don't know what I'm trying to say. I don't know if I'm trying to say we should get rid of money. That'd be nice. It'd solve some problems. I don't know what and that's the thing. I'm just like who I'm saying. I at least have the foresight, or the maybe not the foresight, but the humility to admit that I also don't know what the answer is to the problem of what comes after. But I am calling into question whether or not we need to continue doing these things.
Yeah, I think money needs to exist in some form, because I can't just walk up to somebody and say, hey, I'll trade you 10 cows for my Nintendo Switch. That shit don't click. What's a Nintendo Switch going to do for a farmer? I need something more real. I need Republic credits. Yeah, I think money needs to exist in some form. If it were decentralized, like Bitcoin, which is probably the best example, with already built-in scarcity, like gold, and even itself, it could be potentially used for voting power, to have a system that could represent voting, with the blockchain technology for one person to have a personal address.
Yeah,
that is, it's cryptic, or it's cryptography. It can only be for one person, and you can remain anonymous, and that way you can protect the identity of the person voting for something, a president,
Yeah.
I think doing that type of shit may be the future for voting potentially, where everything's done strictly through technology and it's done anonymously, so no other people are influenced and your vote is assigned to you. It's not paperwork or anything like that. But anyways, I'm digressing, but I do think money needs to be, I think money needs to have a referendum. I think certainly our own government needs to have some type of referendum or some type of change for, I mean, shit, dude, just hearing that talk about car driving in general, owning a vehicle is now going to be a subscription essentially. I mean, shit, car registration's already a subscription just to own the vehicle, but now driving the activity is going to be a subscription. It's like, fuck, dude. I hope that pisses enough people off just to say, we already get taxed enough, bro. I'm good. We're going to go walk or march on to Sacramento and no more taxes, or at least for this. This is definitely the fucking threshold for most people, because thanks to the way our fucking government or maybe it was the vehicle industry at large, the way the vehicles or the freeway systems were arranged, public transportation was not a consideration because there was money to be made.
Well, actually, the initial reason why we created the freeway system was to transport military equipment from one coast to the other in the easiest way possible by road. And so that's the whole reason why they created the freeway system in the first place. And it was not to be used for regular people. It was just to be basically for that purpose alone. And since it was the government funded it, they had to let people use it. So,
well, shit. I mean, it's the same case for the internet, ARPANET, or whatever it was called, DARPANET.
Yeah.
That did not have commercial uses. It was supposed to be strictly educational, but then it evolved to being a service that people pay for to search for information and such. But yeah, what a predicament that we've been put in California, that a car is basically a necessity, and places like New York that have the luxury of having public transportation. And even that is a bit of a double-edged sword, because yes, you have the accessibility to pay, X amount of dollars, probably fairly cheap, to get basically all the boroughs of New York through public transit. I mean, that's fucking great, but you also have to deal with all the people. And then for Californians, you can't wait around for other people to get to work or to take care of things. Like, you can't just go on a bus and take care of everything that you need in a day. You need a fucking car. That shit sucks. So putting a tax on gas, or even putting a tax on mileage, dude, that is already problematic. I think there's going to be enough people that just aren't going to have it. But anyways.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing you bring up too about the cryptocurrency blockchain technology being utilized for voting, because I think that's something that we need to revolutionize as well. We need to revolutionize how the voting system works, because I am fucking convinced. I've been convinced a lot. I don't want people to fucking be like, oh, Josh, you're just one of those Trump guys. No, I don't like Trump. All right, I'm just to say that flat out. I am not a Trump guy. Never have been. Probably never will be. And I believe for many, many years prior to that election happening that the system was fucking rigged. I believed that the system was rigged from the get-go. And that election coming out and Biden winning, Trump wasn't the guy they wanted to win again. That's the storyline. So he had to lose. And yes, there's been plenty of evidence that's come out that's shown all these Trump ballots that just disappeared. And we found them again, but it's too late now. Sorry. Yeah. I already knew this. This was not new news to me. I knew this shit was going on and it was happening. But people are, they're starting to say shit. And like I said, this is the storyline that leads us to where we're at now, where if one side wins or one side loses, they're just going to be so incensed and say, last time it was rigged, not happening this time. And that's where shit pops off. But back to the voting with like the blockchain thing, that's a secure, excellent way to, I don't know how it could work because I'm not an expert on blockchain technology or voting for that matter, but I'm sure that technology could be utilized by someone much smarter than us to essentially make the most secure and incorruptible type of voting system that you could have. And I do think it's time that we take the voting system and bring it into the 21st fucking century. Why do I gotta go to a fucking thing and fill out a piece of paper still? The internet's been around for fucking 25 years.
In commercial use.
Right. That's what, yeah, right. In the general public commercial use. How have we not figured out how to utilize that to vote? Hell, they can run a goddamn poll on Twitter. Totally secure. Everybody gets to vote. Shit. Yeah, granted, you could have people make fake accounts and fucking sway the vote, but that's why you have this blockchain technology. Every single individual unique person has their own blockchain number. And when you make your voting account, you plug that in, and now no one can steal that. You can't get all these extra fucking assholes making fake accounts to vote. I don't know.
Yeah, I think definitely in that way where, I mean, dude, even if it's like messaging people, like the way Twitter operates, right?
Yeah.
You pay for the registration or whatever.
Yeah.
Or maybe you don't. But if anybody wanted to spam or create bot accounts, it's going to cost them not only to make the registration, but also to send messages if they want to do that shit.
Yeah.
To prohibit them from doing that type of thing. That would be the way to do it. I think.
Yeah.
And maybe social media is going to evolve to that, to heavily penalize anybody that wants to sway public opinion. Because I think maybe that's how social media has turned for the worse, because I think to some extent you could say that Russia influenced our elections, and it's because they were capable of running, I mean, the whole Cambridge Analytica thing.
Yeah.
People were able to use information. I mean, for Russia, they were able to find out specifically who they were going to target to influence who they were going to vote for in these last two presidential elections, and possibly even three. But if you make people pay for that with social media, like a possible new form of social media, you raise the stakes, then everybody's like, oh shit, well, I don't know, man. I know we're a country and our prime directive is to infiltrate another country. It's going to cost it's going to cost $10 billion for us to potentially sway an election in our favor for the candidate that we want. I don't know. I'm just thinking that's maybe the use of what blockchain technology and crypto could effectively mitigate problems that already exist within our own voting system.
Yeah, no, that's a very valid point. And that's kind of like what I'm talking about. The evolution of revolution, right? Revolution needs to change. It needs to evolve. Maybe the revolution doesn't have to be this violent. Sure, maybe at some point it will have to be that. But at least now, maybe we don't need to go that far. Maybe we can revolutionize the way that we vote. We can revolutionize the way we use our monetary system. We can revolutionize the way our taxes are handled and done. Because I can't tell you a system that's more unfair than the United States tax system. I can't fucking tell you. I can't find a system that exists in the world that's as unfair as that.
Imagine if we put the U.S. government on a blockchain technology environment where we find out exactly where our tax dollars go. No black books or nothing. Well, I'm sure there's probably still going to be black books that exist,
Yeah.
but essentially, like, we would know for sure where our money goes across the board. No, and I think you could probably look up that information in general, right? But
Yeah.
to have real records, to have the transaction happen from one account to another on a public ledger, fuck yeah, I'm all for that. And especially if it's something that they don't control, but it's a consensus that everybody sees it, witnesses it, and agrees that this money is allotted for this purpose.
Yeah.
What are you looking at?
I was looking to see because about, and it's funny how much propaganda there is negating these things, but I've seen the video of Donald Rumsfeld just days before 9/11 saying to like testifying before some congressional committee, oh yeah, the Pentagon lost like $1 trillion. Like we don't even know where it is. Like it's just missing.
Out of the blue.
Out of the blue, it's just missing. And then 2 or 3 days later, the worst terrorist attack in the history of our country happens.
But what
Convenient
about
timing.
What about that $1 trillion?
Yeah, no one ever asked because 9/11 happened. And guess what? We had to spend $10 trillion to fucking go through and have this whole war go down. So no one was asking questions. Nobody gave a shit about the $1 trillion. That shit happens all the time. Again, it's this situation of like in California. Well, what happened to that $100 billion we had 2 years ago? It's gone now. If we put the government on blockchain technology where they can't fake and they have to account for every single dollar and show where it's going, and it can be audited at any time by any member of the public, that's how you get true accountability. And like I said, I'm no expert. I don't know what the solution is exactly, but that sounds fucking pretty good to me. And you know what also sounds pretty good to me is any political figure getting caught and proven that they did some sort of corruption with money or whatever, immediate execution. I think I've said that before, but I'm going to stick by that. Immediate guillotine. Done.
And I think we've talked about it on another possibly CUP. We talked about another podcast that people end up not doing things because of the severity of the punishment.
Yeah.
In Singapore.
Oh, I think we talked about it on here.
Garbage.
Yeah.
The streets are clean as fuck. They allow public drinking in the streets because, hey, you guys were willing to play by the rules for the garbage shit. Yeah, we can have public drinking because you guys are responsible enough to take your garbage home or throw it away in a receptacle.
Right, yeah.
And even Japan mostly doesn't have trash cans that lie everywhere. You have to go to a convenience store. You have to go to a supermarket or something to throw things away, or you save it and you take it home with you. Yeah. Which means that the people are pretty responsible in that regard. And it's possibly because of the severity of the punishment for. So what I'm really getting at is that if death is the punishment for a person holding public office, for them not to fuck around, yeah, man, maybe you get one strike. You get one. You get
a free pass.
You get a free pass. You get a slap on the wrist, or maybe
we just beat you. Maybe you have a public beating. Maybe you get beat. Maybe we do something like it's Friday night, public fucking defender night, and we have some UFC fighters. We get like 3 of them, and we put you in an octagon, and they just beat the shit out of you for like 5 minutes.
Or we go scarlet letter.
Oh,
in literature, you get branded as the thing that you did.
Yeah,
so you don't forget that you did that shit.
And no one forgets that you did that shit.
The second time you do it, or the second time you have an egregious offense, you're fucking dead.
Yeah. That'll definitely solve a lot of those problems, I feel like. And I just wish, this is going to be a hot take, and you're probably going to hear about this a little more on the next episode number 5, which is going to be the Gaza issue.
Oh, God.
And, but I wish that people would take and have more outrage and have as much outrage at the shit that they're doing here to fuck us over as they do with issues that are happening around the world that don't directly technically affect us. I wish people would be as fucking hot about this, about these taxes and all this horse shit. We should be setting up encampments in front of like government buildings, in front of the state capitals, protesting this shit and fighting the cops and fucking doing January 6th, but at the state level to protest. I wish people gave a shit enough about that as opposed to, yeah, I get it. Some fucking kids are dying in Gaza. And that sucks, but that doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect you.
Yeah, I think, you could do both things. You can have both things, but I think people have some type of priority about certain topics, some certain hot topics that have been fucking about lately.
Yeah.
But yes, it would be certainly nice if there was some type. I know we already talked about it, but I also don't like people falling into one camp or the other. and I hate to pigeonhole, or I hate to even throw this topic in as well, but I think part of the problem is that life itself has become binary.
Oh, true.
It's either this or that.
Yeah.
And it's yes or no, this or that, Gaza or Palestine. And I think we have to possibly think outside the box and say that there's more solutions on the table if we give ourselves the chance, if we don't just say, no, this is how it has to be. I'm only on Palestine's side because there's more deaths on this side. No, I'm only on Israel's side because, you know, Israel has suffered, or rather the Jewish people have suffered enough. They deserve to have a stake in the Holy Lands. And this is a legitimate nation state that should exist. I know that's gonna fall. People are just like that, man. They like picking one side or the other. I just think that we should expand our thinking and saying, no, both sides are wrong or both sides are right, or every side has a legitimate argument, but the only solution is if we think above these two options.
Yeah.
And I think that should be applicable to everything within our own government. There are multiple parties that exist within our government, but the two that stand out are Republican and Democrat.
Right.
Canada has 6 parties, 6 legitimate parties that exist in their government that have a chance to hold the office of prime minister. And we don't have something like that. I'm like, or we do, but we don't consider that these other extra parties are legitimate because, well, I don't want to say they're wacky, but but it's just, I don't know, man. Maybe we should just do away with parties like you've talked about in the past and go to like a pirate society, or just people that have solutions, and you have multiple candidates besides 2, and just come up what's going to serve the country best. You have 6 people that have 6 solutions for multiple topics, and this person sounds like they have a general idea for all of them. Fuck it, this guy's president. Fuck yeah. That's how I think we should operate. It's not, I like this guy, he's a Democrat, I've voted this way for 50 years, I'm not going to change. That shit is holding us back.
Yeah.
And I think the opposite, or vice versa, if you're a Republican and you feel a certain way about them and you have favoritism towards them, that also is harmful.
You know, I think I'm going to start a new political party.
Ultra guillotine.
Yep. The Guillotine Party. And our first candidate for office is Ultra Guillotine. I'm being kind of serious, not about Ultra Guillotine, but like the Guillotine Party. You know, that's got a nice ring to it. And we're in favor of no government corruption, and any government corruption is met with death, immediate death. Like, that's it. No questions asked.
With historical ties to France.
Yeah. And our party slogan is going to be, we don't want any fucking cake. All right.
Yeah.
That's going to be the party slogan.
If you hang shit.
Oh, we got to make a rhyming one.
Yeah. It's got to be some reference to King Louis.
Oh yeah.
Like if you do a Louis, we chop your head like King. Is it 14th or 15th?
I think it was the 14th.
Yeah. He was
14th, I think.
They got beheaded.
I think it was.
I don't remember, dude. I'm not really that well versed in my European. It's been a while. So don't quote me on that, but are you gonna look it up?
Yeah. Oh man. It just transcribed everything we just said on the fucking phone. Yeah, I'm gonna look it up right now. Was it French?
The last person to be beheaded? Last King Louis
King.
King Louis.
No, it was
14th.
The last king of France to ever be executed 16th? Was the 16th.
16th. Okay.
Yeah.
Shit, we're both wrong.
Man, it brought an end to 1,000 years of continuous French monarchy. Fuck, man, millennia. Fuck, man, that's crazy.
And now they got it right in some way. I mean, it's not perfect, but again, talking about how the French were up in arms about the retirement age being moved 2 years. Look where that got them, dude. They went from a monarchy to a more democratic government, and it worked out in their favor.
Yeah. And I think we need to start doing that here about taxes and just the way the government's run in general. So I don't know.
Did we actually get to like what you wanted to talk about for the evolution of revolution?
Yeah, it was talking about the ways in which revolution needs to change.
Oh shit! I thought it was going to be about like a historical thing, and then we were going to work our way through different scenarios and shit.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was bringing up those as examples that I was going to use throughout this thing of like how revolution should change.
Yeah.
And we got to a couple of them. We didn't get to all of them, but like that's fine. That would be cool to do a historical. I mean, maybe that's a CUP episode, is like the historical aspect of revolution. But this was more of exploring what things about revolution needs to change, or what can we revolutionize that doesn't require the ultimate violent fucking act of civil disobedience to make it happen, I guess.
So did we do it?
I think we did.
Okay.
I think we did somewhat effectively. I mean, we at least brought out, listen, we didn't come up with any solutions, but we brought out some ideas. We had a discourse and discussed it, and you know, it's there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. That's pretty much all I had. Do you have anything else?
Nope. That was pretty much it.
All right. Well, that's good. So anyways, stay tuned for the next episode, which, I mean, the way this is happening, you'll probably have heard the last episode first because that's just the order in which it's going to be in. So, but if you didn't, then hey, go check out the next episode where you might stop listening because you're going to hear some controversy. But just remember, that's what you fucking signed up for. If you want to listen to this podcast, you signed up for controversial issues. So
For entertainment.
yes, correct. For entertainment purposes only. And again, I just want to further say anything that we discussed here in this podcast or other previous episodes, we meant to say in Minecraft after everything. So that's, you know, just FYI, this is what we meant. All right.
In the service of the hacker known as 4chan.
Yes, indeed. So anyways, check out all our other podcasts. As I said at the beginning, All Gas, No Trash, Anime Syndicate, But Fuck Nowhere Show, Central Intelligence Podcast, Chirping from the Pine, Game Rage Movies and TV, Game Rage Star Wars, Game Rage Wrestling, Into the Waste, which is the Wasteland Weekend podcast. If you're into that kind of stuff, it's not a lot, but it's there. Panel to Panel, Team Killing Glitch Charge, and Without Censor, the interview podcast. You can also check out Millennial Frog's 3 new albums, Poverty of Content, The Gentleman Known as Millennial Frog, and 30 Second Master, of which the theme song for this podcast is off of Poverty of Content. The opening song is Buy My Dropshipping Manual, and the ending song that you're about to hear is literally Just Eating. That's the name of the song. So if you like what you hear, go check out more on those albums anywhere music is able to be heard, I guess. So anyways, all right, well, stay tuned for the next one.